Destiny Nixon. Is nice meeting. Very, very wonderful meeting. I'm very excited about this live interview section. I'm going to be looking at sexual purity, the concept of sexual purity and celibacy. The concept of sexual purity and celibacy. So, you're going to be doing justice to that by addressing these few interview questions. A lot of people would want to hear from you how you are able to overcome sexual struggle, and today you become an international speaker on sexual purity. So we want to know your wonderful testimony. First of all, we want to meet you and briefly tell us a little about yourself and your background.
That's fine with me. So my full name is Destiny Nixon. I was born September 9th, 1990. My mother's name is Pamela Kone. My father's name is David Nixon Jr. I am the only daughter of my mom, youngest child from my father, and I have 4 siblings. And altogether, it's 4 of us. And so I'm a graduate from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I obtained a Bachelor's of Arts degree there in communications, a minor in journalism, and I graduated in May of 2012. And I'm basically just someone who has grown up in church, a member of Second Calvary Baptist Church, grew up in church, been there for as long as I can remember, but I didn't have a relationship with God. And so because I left, like as you would say, that doorway open for the enemy to just infiltrate my life that way, because I did not have an open line of communication with God, that just allowed me to go through so many struggles. But thank God that I realized that I was lacking in that area, and that's what I needed in order to be able to overcome a lot of those issues and those concerns.
And Destiny, there was a statement you made at your written interview. You said, although I was saved and established in a Bible-based church, the lack of a personal relationship with God led me into a lifestyle of low self-esteem, promiscuity, poor decision-making, child and trauma. How can a lack of relationship with God lead to all these?
Basically, when you don't have that relationship, just like a good relationship with the parent, I had to first start to train myself to think that the way even though I cannot physically see God, I have to think about him the same way I would think about my physical mother and my physical father. And so if there's an issue or a concern, I'm not going to go to my friends first before I go to my mom or my dad to get that advice, because number one, they're older than me and they're wiser than me. And anything that I in my own constraints can't conjure up an answer for or an idea about, I'm supposed to be able to go to my parent and get that guidance even before I make a decision. And that's the same thing with a relationship with God. Anything that you want to do, that you desire to do, any decision that you want to make, you're supposed to bring those things to God first. And so when you don't have that relationship, that just leaves open a crack for the enemy to get in and to taint your thoughts, to taint your decision making and all those processes, the way you see yourself. You don't see yourself the way God sees you because you don't know how he sees you, because you don't talk to him to know what he thinks about you and what he feels about you and how he feels for you. And so when you don't have that relationship, it just leaves the door open because you're not consulting him first before you move, and you're not discussing with him the things that he wants for you and has for you, and then that just you don't know your value and your how much you mean to him and how much he loves you, and so in that way you don't value yourself that much, and then you make those poor decisions.
Very, very, very true. Destiny, very true. But in this situation, how did your parents? What was your relation with your parents like? Didn't they help you? Even though you have no relationship with God, your parents. What was your relation with your parents like? Wouldn't they be able to help you in such growing up as growing up?
Well, that would be another issue that I was having. I feel like a lot of and that could very well be why I didn't have the relationship that I needed to develop with my spiritual father, is because the relationship that I had with my physical parent, it was off. It wasn't a good relationship. I had a stepfather in my home since I was in preschool, but we were not close at all. So I didn't feel like I had the natural feeling that a daughter craves from their father, that father-daughter bond, that daddy's little girl. I did not have that at home. And then my biological father, he has been on and off of drugs since before I was born. And so I didn't have a close relationship with him. He was more of basically in and out of my life, which I ended up, that's the type of pattern that I had. When I started to date and deal with men, I dealt with the in and out situation, which kind of pattern behind the relationship I had with my biological father and my stepfather. And then I was never really comfortable talking to my mom about certain stuff because I didn't want her to judge me or feel differently about me. And then the stuff that I was comfortable talking to her about, because of the way she grew up, she didn't really know how to have an open and honest conversation with me. And so I feel like the relationship that I had with my physical parents, that mimicked the relationship I had with God. And because that relationship was not strengthened, my relationship with God was just as bad as my relationship with my physical parents.
So you would say that your relationship with the parents, would you say that affect you negatively in the problem you had?
Oh, definitely. Especially when it comes to sexual purity, every decision that I made, which I didn't realize, it was a subconscious thing. Now that I've gotten closer to God and I've grown just on a maturity level, I realize now that every decision that I was making as it relates to having sex and being involved with various guys, it was because I was lacking attention and love at home that I felt that I would find in these people. And it of course it doesn't work, but it feels good at the time. But of course we know it comes with a whole lot of other issues than just the attention that you get from them.
Okay. Can you briefly give us few history of the struggles that you went through before you had a transformation?
Oh yeah. So by the time I was 24, I had been involved in emotionally abusive relationships. I've been raped. I've had various partners who didn't really value who I was as a person, which that led to me having more emotional abuse that I inflicted on myself because it made me feel that I was less than. I've been involved with 2 vicarious males, one of which was my ex-husband, so I'm a divorcee. And even dealt with betrayal involved in that, finding out that my ex-best friend was involved with my ex-husband, and he just so happened to be a male. All kinds of stuff. I had an STD 5 times. I had chlamydia 4 times. Had trichomonas once. So I have, when it's all said and done, I've been through just about almost every consequence that comes with the idea of just living an impure sexual lifestyle.
And you believe that everything that happened to you is because you lived sexual impure life?
I don't believe that absolutely everything happened because I was living an impure lifestyle. For instance, when I was a victim of sexual assault, I had actually decided before that happened to me that I was going to be celibate. And I had been celibate for, I think it was about going into the 4th month before I was date raped. And so that for sure I know had absolutely nothing to do with my choice. It wasn't my choice to be taken advantage of. I feel like that was one of the times when I was actually getting my relationship was getting strengthened in God, and I was making the steps, taking the steps properly in order to get on the path to purity. And I feel like that was one of the things that the devil tried to orchestrate to kind of throw me off of my game and get me off the path. And yes, it worked for a little bit, but I'm sorry, I got back on track. So I don't think that everything has happened to me, but a lot that has happened to me was because of those. But the majority of the things that hasn't happened to me was because I made poor decisions in dealing with my body.
Thank you very much. But you talk about the rape issue. I would like to know much about that. How did it happen? How did you bounce back? Because talking about issue of rape is a very serious abuse that affects people emotionally, psychologically. And how did it happen? And how did you bounce back suddenly and continue your work in being an celibate?
It actually took me up until February of this year to actually get back on track, and that happened May 26th of 2012. So that when I say it threw me off for basically almost 2 full years, because just the idea that I had decided to purify myself again, and that somebody else made the choice to take that from me, I think that was the hardest thing for me to deal with. That it was a plenty of people out here that I could have decided to lay down with, but I had not. And so the fact that somebody else took it into their hands to decide that they wanted to take that possession from me, I took that hard. So instead of me seeking God in that situation and in that area right off, I was deciding in my own strength that, well, since somebody else took that from me, I don't need that to be the last time that I remember having sexual intercourse. And so I decided then that I wanted it to be on my terms when I decided that I wanted to go back to living a pure lifestyle. And that just led to me just spiraling almost out of control, from the marriage to more partners and everything then. And I feel like once I got to the point where I was physically, emotionally, and spiritually tired of seeing the same pattern over again of meeting somebody, getting involved with that person, giving them a piece of my spirit, my soul to take with them, and then that person disappearing, that's when I started saying, okay, God, you know what, I can't keep doing this. Like, it is draining me, and I know that you've been calling me to do this, so this is something I want to hand over to you. Teach me what to do, because you know that I'm willing, but I don't know where to go. And so I feel like when I had that conversation with God, I took from myself trying to use my flesh and fight this spiritual war. That was me giving that over to God and telling him to handle it in the spirit realm, because in my flesh it was too weak for me to fight all of the principalities and the spiritual demons and be involved in lust and the craving. Like you said, it starts in the heart. So craving those desires and the impure thoughts and the impure actions, my heart was craving those things. So when I relinquished those feelings to God, that changed everything. Like that set the tone for where I am now.
Glory to God. Praise God for your transformation. You know, what you just said is practically what you can use to help other people to recover from those that are rape victims. Practically, the person the Lord laid in your heart, and you can transform to believe that that is the same process other people that are rape victims would come out from their struggle also, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The question is that the way you came out from the rape issue, from trying to address the issue of rape, the way you came out from, you recovered from the rape, being a rape victim, and you've been transformed. The process you had, the process that was given to you by the Lord, that same process works for other people that are rape victims all over the world.
I definitely, if I was hearing you correctly, I definitely think that those same tactics that I use will work. I actually had to go through a lot to get to this point. I went to counseling. I had a therapist that I went to for a year. After that happened, and it was like I didn't wait. So for someone who they may have been molested as a child, it might be different for them because now it's more of a deep-rooted issue. But I went right away, sought therapy. I started volunteering for a nonprofit organization, Touch Me Not Incorporated, where I found empowerment from speaking out and helping, telling my story in order to help other victims heal. And those types of things, were already being put in place for me to start to overcome that. And then when we just add in, just developing that relationship with God, that just took all the things that I had been doing before and just took them to the next level, so that by the time that I was ready to give that up to Him, I had already taken a lot of the healing process up front, and so that was just the last step for me to realize that this is not something that I can do on my own. Let me hand this over to God. So I think it's definitely a lot of those tactics that I use that someone else who has been molested or who has been raped, they can use those same things. But God, I definitely would say that a lot of stuff, a lot of people will think that, okay, let me just pray, hand it over to God and what have you. And that is the number one thing that we want to do. But we also have to recognize, like I tell other people, even when I go speak, that God has given somebody the knowledge and everything to be able to go to school and gain the degree and everything to give you access to therapy. So He wouldn't give someone that type of education and that background to be able to help if He didn't want us to take advantage of that. So I definitely say seek professional help and seek your spiritual help. And even if there's anyone that is a counselor within, your church or something like that who has the background to be able to assist with something like that, go do that too. But I think that they work hand in hand in order to be able to help someone heal from that. So I think you need all those working parts, the professional help, the spiritual help, all those things together in order to heal from something like that.
Yeah, very, very, very much correct. Thank you very much, and Destiny, for the DP answers. I want to look at something here. I'm looking at a question. Why did you choose to become a celibate? Looking at a beautiful lady like you living in a sexually infested generation and deciding to become a celibate, somehow it may look funny to a lot of people. A lot of young men may be wondering why would he take such a decision? How do you handle such a pressure on being a celibate? Why did you choose to become a celibate? And when did you choose to pursue after sexual purity?
I I really feel like God had been telling me since even before I decided to give up. I won't say lose because I didn't lose it, but I gave up my virginity. I think even before that, He had always been grooming me to live a life that is different from the norm of what everyone else in society is doing. I've always felt, even when I lost my virginity when I was 11, and so I was going to the 8th grade, and even then, fornication has never sat well with me. I've had times when, because I think it was you that stated that earlier, that because I was far away in my walk with God, that the conviction was not as strong. I've had those times where the conviction was not as strong, but I've always felt in my heart that premarital sex was not right, and that I needed to live according to the standard that God had set for my life. And so then in the times where I did feel like, okay, you know what, everybody else is doing it, why can't I do it and get away with it? Then those were times when I was disciplined or brought back on course by contracting an STD or by getting in bouts of depression and or having a boyfriend or whoever abandoned me. And so I feel like from day one, I had always been called to live that lifestyle. I just had not been listening, and I'd been running because society says that it's okay. And so in order for me to fit in, I needed to do what everybody else was doing and be like them. And I had to finally get to the point where I realized I was not born to be like everybody else. I have a purpose, and I was birthed to be different and for my difference to make a difference. So I guess that would be the best answer for that question.
Thank you very much. You know something, a lot of people all over the world have the wrong concept of celibacy, and some people don't actually know the meaning. Can you give us clear meaning of what celibacy is all about?
I know the main thing that people think when they hear the word being celibate is just to be abstaining from sexual intercourse. And once I started developing that relationship with God and reading more and studying more about it and talking to Him more about it, I started realizing that just because you don't have sexual intercourse, that doesn't make you sexually pure. And I know you were saying, and when I heard you speaking before, that it starts in the heart. And that's definitely true. You have got to purify your desires, your heart, the thoughts that you have, the situations you put yourself into. I originally started in August trying to be celibate, what I thought was celibate, and that's just abstaining from sexual intercourse. And that's the misconception that, okay, I don't have sex, but I can do everything else. And that's not okay. When you're trying to be sexually pure, that means you have to abstain from everything, even the thoughts that are lustful. You have to rebuke those thoughts, because then those thoughts will turn into actions. And so the misconception is that, okay, I just don't have sex, but I can engage in oral sex, and I can engage in touching and feeling and looking and seeing, and you can't do any of those things, because that just sets you up to be in a position to where you're going to fall. And so when we think of celibacy, we have to shift our mind frame from thinking I'm celibate, I don't have sex, to I don't engage in anything that can cause me to fall short and put me into the trap of having sex. And that's the way I see the word celibacy now.
Is there any way the Bible talk about encouraging celibacy? Because some doctrines, some people in different denominations and believe, they don't believe on celibacy. So does the Bible encourage people to become celibate?
Definitely. That's where I get all of my strength from. Like when I feel like, is this possible? You go to the Word and it's possible. I feel like God wouldn't give us a mandate to do something if it was physically impossible for us to do it. He's not a God that will set us up for a trap. And I know it's even in 1 Corinthians when we get the letters, and one of the letters clearly addressed marriage and sexual immorality, and it clearly says that when we engage in sexual sin, that is a self-inflicted sin against our bodies, and that, we should abstain from any type of sexual relation until marriage, whenever the weight of that sexual sin is lifted, because it just entraps our bodies, it entraps our temples. And so when we're reading, it tells us, I know it says if it's good for you to stay single because, once you do marry, your attention is divided. You have to not only focus on the needs that God has, but also on your spouse's needs. But for when you're single, you have to live that lifestyle so that you don't get distracted from the things that God has for you and what He needs you to do. And that's one of the things that it says in Corinthians, to let us know that we have to live that sexually pure lifestyle so that we're fully submitted to God and so that He can use us. He can't use a temple that's tainted. And when you engage in impure activities, impure sexual activities, being that you're engaged in sexual relations and you're not married, you are tying yourself to someone else, and that is taken away from your relationship with God. And so you have to take that out of the equation. And even if you've already fallen short and lost your virginity or what have you, you can still come back from that. It's not a definite like, oh well, I already did it, so I can continue on. We don't continue in sin. We don't live under the grace rule. We can every day submit to God. So it clearly says in the Word that it should be done, and because it says that it should be done, it's possible. I think a lot of people, they don't do it because they think it's impossible. Society is what says it's impossible. The Word of God lets you know that it's very possible. It's been possible since before we became living in the generation that we're living in. And so I think people have to actually read and know that it's a mandate because it's something that's doable.
Okay, thank you very much. Would you say, like for example, 2009, after I struggled with some relationship, I find it so difficult that if I'm in a relationship, I'm very likely I'd fall into immorality. Then 2006, when I got saved, got born again, I made a vow that I'm not going to enter any relationship until I'm ready to get married. I'm just going to stay away from opposite sex until I'm ready to get married, because I don't want to fall into immorality. I feel that if I am in a relationship, I'm very likely fall into immorality. So therefore, I made a vow to God that I'm not going to have sex. I'm not going to enter any relationship until I'm ready for marriage. Does that make me celibate?
Just having that idea that you're not going to be in a relationship until you're ready to marry, does that constitute you being celibate?
What? Can I repeat what I just said?
Yeah, go ahead.
Huh?
Yes, please.
Okay. I said that 2006, I made a vow to God that when I got saved, when I got born again in 2006, I made a vow to God that I am going to, I'm not going to have sex until I'm ready to get married. I'm not going to go into any relationship until I'm ready for marriage, because I don't want to fall into immorality, because I want to live a sexually pure life. that vow I made to God, does that make me a celibate?
I feel like it starts with the vow.
I was actually looking at what is the difference between being a celibate and what is sexual purity, what is celibate, what is different between the two of them?
The difference between sexual purity and celibacy?
Yes.
So for me, celibacy is just abstaining from the act. I believe that sexual purity, it encompasses everything. So it's the things that you think. So you can not have sex but still think impure thoughts, and that's still not okay. So it's the way you think about those things. I think it entails. A lot of people think that it's okay to masturbate because you're not involving another person's body. When you're thinking about being sexually pure, you can't engage in masturbation because masturbation can lead to can still have that doorway open, that crack open to you engaging in sexual intercourse. So I feel like celibacy is just like the base, and then sexual purity is the end all be all. So that is, you do not engage in any of the sexual relations, and then you're also to a level of purity where if you don't look at your neighbor sinfully or lustfully, you don't crave those impure desires. So it takes it a step further than just the spiritual. Then you're dealing with the just the physical. Then you're dealing with when you're going into sexual purity, it deals with your whole being, the thoughts and the physical and the spiritual relationship, because then you know that you're leaning on God to sustain you in that area. And it's not just, okay, my flesh is not doing this. You're working on all three levels to not fall into that trap, if that makes sense.
Thanks. Thanks for your patience and your taking time out to answer our questions. Our interview session will soon be over. I just have some few more questions to clear up on this concept of celibacy and sexual purity. With celibacy, can I say celibacy is the divine strategy to attain sexual purity?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Can I say celibacy is a divine strategy to attain sexual purity?
I believe that they definitely work hand in hand.
We can't talk about celibacy without talking about sexual purity.
No,
Can we talk about sexual purity? Can we talk about sexual purity without talking about celibacy?
I don't think you can. I think they.
I don't have to be celibate to be sexually pure. That's the question.
You said you don't have to be celibate to be sexually pure?
Can I be, must I be celibate to become sexually pure?
I think you have that. I think they can't be thought about independently, one of the other, if that makes sense.
Okay. Being a celibate, could that be a call of God? Can everybody become a celibate? Is celibacy a call of God, or I can take a personal decision on my own as a person?
Well, I know people who are technically celibate and they're not pure. I was celibate and not sexually pure, so I think you can do one part without doing the other. But to do it the right way, they're not supposed to be independent one of the other. Some people, they are celibate until they say and which that's how I started out. I'm going to be celibate until I meet somebody and become boyfriend and girlfriend. We're a couple. I love that person, and then I'm going to engage with them. I wasn't thinking about being married. And so I think a lot of people, they consider themselves celibate simply because they haven't been presented with the optimal opportunity to engage in sexual sin, and it has nothing nothing much to do with God at all. For most people, it has nothing to do with God. I know when I started out, I wasn't saying I'm not doing this until I get married. I was saying I'm not doing this until I get a boyfriend that's decent. And you can, so then in that case, you can be celibate and not be sexually pure. But I think when we have to look at it in a biblical perspective, those two things are supposed to join hand in hand. They're not supposed to be separate one from the other. But people can be celibate without being sexually pure. And it's the mind state that they have about it. I'm not going to have sex. I'm not going to engage in sexual relations until I get a boyfriend or a girlfriend or somebody that I really care about. And that is totally different from somebody who has committed and made a vow to God that they're not going to do this until it's right in his eyes. So that's a whole nother, those are two totally different things, even though that the people, two different people, they might be doing the same thing, not engaging in intercourse, but the vow makes it different, and the intent or the purpose for what you're doing makes the difference between I'm just celibate, I'm not going to do this, and then you're chasing after sexual purity.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Enjoying the answers. Now, if I'm unmarried, if I decide not to get married, does that make me celibate?
You said getting married, does that make you celibate?
If someone decides not to get married, want to remain single, does that make the person a celibate?
Well, it depends on what definition you're going by, because the Merriam-Webster book definition, that's one of the definitions of being celibate, is being unmarried. And so, technically, if you're going by Merriam-Webster, you not being married is considered being celibate. That's a actual dictionary definition. Now, we have to take that a step further. We look at that a whole nother way. But if you're looking at the actual Merriam-Webster dictionary definition, being unmarried, that's technically, but that's not the biblical definition or all those things. But being unmarried is the definition of celibacy.
So what you're saying is that you do not technically accept the definition of dictionary concerning celibacy?
I don't think you can. You can because the dictionary definition is the way we're going to phonetically break down the word and the way the surface. When you look into the biblical ideas of sexual immorality, it goes way beyond just the basis of you're unmarried and you don't engage in sexual intercourse. It's way more than that. And so we can't just stop at the Merriam-Webster, and that's what most people do, and that's why we have the society that we have. We stop at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and we don't go over and research in our word and look to our Bible for guidance. And that's how, when I was trying to do it myself, that's why I kept getting messed up, because I'm thinking of the world definition, the Merriam-Webster definition of I'm celibate is I don't have sex. And because I stopped sexual intercourse, and because I stopped there, that's why I wasn't achieving the goal of sexual purity and the true goal of what it means to live that lifestyle. So you can't just, when you're a believer, you can't just stop there. And that's why I think I get confused with some of the questions that you're asking me, because I can't just think about it in the societal way or the spiritual realm if I want to be successful. I have to take it a step further and go to my word, go to the Bible, and look there for my help, because that's where the word of God is going to increase my faith in that area, is going to increase my strength in that area, and it's going to guide me in the right way. You cannot just stop with the black and white on the page definition of what this means, because it's not enough. It's not enough.
Thanks so much. You know, two more questions. We are done with this interview section. I'm really enjoying it. Sorry for the hard questions. I'm so sorry for that. And two more questions. We're done. But I'm actually enjoying your answers. You know, I see God using your destiny to really help people, to open people's eyes and to the true concept of celibacy. You know, even myself, and sometimes I have confusion about this celibacy talk and doctrine and teaching, even in church, even in the society, the dictionary, the belief of the word of celibacy. Everybody claims and celibacy and all that. So God is really going to use you to open people's eyes to the truth of what celibacy is all about, what the Bible talks about it. That is why this interview is very important. And prayer is to get to a lot of hands for them to really understand the concept and what this is all about, even in achieving sexual purity. God bless you so much. And two more questions we're done. One question I want to ask is, how can I obtain this in a celibate? How can one become a celibate? How can we achieve this? Because today I'm celebrating you because some few years back you've been struggling in morality, you've been struggling. You face a lot of issues with your life. Today you're working in celibacy, and today you're enjoying a very wonderful work in sexual purity. Glory to God by the grace of God. So I want to know how possible can one attain this in a celibate in such a crazy sexual world?
The first thing I would say is definitely don't be like me and let God be the last resort. If you want to be successful in reaching the goal of sexual purity, you have to take that to God first. You can't say, I'm going to try this, try that, and everything else, because none of those things are going to work. You have to, number one, know in your heart. First, believe in your heart that I'm going to do this, I can do this, but I cannot do it by myself, because we don't fight against, Ephesians 6 is my favorite, 6 and 10, my favorite scripture. We don't fight against flesh and blood. So even though it looks like Beverly is tempting you with her short skirt and her one piece, or Bob, he looks real nice in his suit and he's tempting you, it's not about the physical body. We are fighting against principalities. And so at the end of the day, if you do not take it to God and realize that is a form of spiritual warfare, you will not win. You have got to give it over to Him first and tell Him, God, I know that you called me to live above the standard that society sets, that it's okay to engage in premarital sex and do whatever my body feels I feel the need to do, and that if I hand this over to you, that you will help me. And I'm not saying that it can't stop there. So you don't just stop with making that vow and handing it over to Him. You actually have to live intentionally and on purpose after that step moving forward, because he can't help you if you are setting yourself up to be trapped. So once you give it over to Him, that doesn't mean that I don't do anything else and I go do whatever I feel like doing. Once you give it over to Him and tell Him, Lord, I realize that in my own strength I can't overcome this, you have to actually live a different lifestyle. I tell people all the time that ask me about it, about my walk and journey with sexual purity. It's certain. I love to read. I used to love to read romance novels and other books and watch certain shows. It's certain books I cannot read anymore because it has sexual scenes in there and the imagery is too much. There's certain movies. It's a movie coming out now that I want to see, The Perfect Guy, because I like the actors in it and the storyline. But I realize that more than likely I'm not going to be able to sit through that movie because there will be some sexual scenes that I don't need to let get into my spirit. I love poetry, but now I realize that I cannot go to the same poetry slams that I'm going to, that if I go to poetry slams, I have to go to Christian poetry slams because I can't sit in an environment and listen to people recite poetry, even though I love it and it's beautiful. I can't listen to them recite poetry that promotes any type of sexual behavior because I can't let those things get in my spirit. I can't talk to guys that I know I have a sexual attraction to, and that's it. So I know that they don't serve me any other purpose but to get me aroused and feeling some type of way. So I can't talk to those people anymore. And it's just a lot of stuff, a lot of situations after the fact that I had to change about what I was doing in my lifestyle. So not only did I have to hand that over to God, I had to live on purpose, always making decisions to where I'm not putting myself in a position to be tempted and then in turn falling short. And then even now I don't date, but when it does become time for me to marry, whenever God sends that man along, the one that's for me, I know that there's going to have to be strategies that we have in place so that we don't fall short during the courtship. So if we have to have supervised dates, and we have to have a curfew, and I know that I can't have him come over, and all those things, those strategies have to be in place so that I don't fall short. So all those things work together. So number one, give it to God, and then number two, you use the common sense and everything else that comes with wisdom to not put yourself in a situation to where you're going to fall. And then when you do get in a situation that you know the enemy has orchestrated to tempt you and distract you, you know that God is gonna help you deal with that. So you have to always be in prayer over that. I know that when I started speaking, letting other people know about my journey, I started having dreams that I was engaging in sexual intercourse. And so I know that I didn't put myself in that position to be tempted. It was just because I was encouraging other people that they could do the same thing, that the enemy was trying to throw me off and distract me in that way. So you always have to be in prayer. You always have to be seeking God in that area, and don't ever think that because you've won victories in the past that you can put yourself in a poor situation, because you're always going to have to be living in a lifestyle to make sure that you're not going to fall into that temptation. And then for things you don't see coming, situations you don't put yourself in, like I just went to sleep. I didn't have anything to do with that dream that I had. And so for those instances, that's when you know God is going to handle that, and you take that to him in prayer so that you still don't fall in those cases.
I'm so excited. I'm just full of smile and laughter. What you're saying is absolutely right. You even talking about sexual doorways, not giving the devil a chance, and you have to shut all the doorways so that the devil won't be given a chance. And he knew the doorways and he had to shut all of them. And, the Bible says we should not, when we think that we stand, we should take heed so that we will not fall. So, and it's a very powerful advice for people like us. We talk about sexual purity, try to teach people and all that. That doesn't make us superhuman. We know that we can also be tempted. The devil can also release the spirit of lust to attack us. Therefore, we must take heed and always be vigilant in prayers and be watch through the guide against being. Or I know the grace of God is stronger in your life and is going to keep you and strengthen you in your great work. Finally, can you give us a word of encouragement for people that will listen to this interview all over the nations? And you just share with us and encourage on the people, give them a word of encouragement and advice that they can also work in sexual purity.
The first thing that I want to say, and I know it probably sounds cliche, but it is I have to say it because it's absolutely true. With God, everything is possible when you have that faith, that communication, that trust, that relationship with God. Everything is possible. But it can't just stop at salvation. It starts with salvation, but it can't just stop there. You have to develop that relationship with him. And because we know, I don't think that sexual purity is a call to a few select people who are special in God's eyes. No, It's a mandate to everybody. And so that means that it is achievable to live in a world if everyone were to develop that relationship with him, seek salvation, and then develop that relationship with God. It's possible to live in a world where everyone is living a life of sexual purity. So don't ever think that oh, well, that's good for her and that's good for him, that's good for them. They can do that. I can't do that. You've already failed if you put in your mind that it's something that you cannot do. So number one, you have to seek God in that area. And number two, you have to believe in your heart that it is something that's possible for you to do. And just always be praying and seeking God in that area, and He will turn it around. I'm a living witness that He can just really do a 360 in your life if you only trust Him to do it and lean on Him and don't put anything on yourself and your own strength. And also don't beat yourself up. I started in August, and I feel, and if I would have just stayed down, I wouldn't be where I am now to be able to tell people that it's possible. So if you do fall short, you don't have to stay there. And the word tells us we're not supposed to stay there. We take that to God, we repent, and we start again. But you have to, when you repent, it doesn't mean say, God, forgive me, and keep on going. You really have to be sorry in your heart and turn away from. You turn away from that sin. So if you feel like, okay, I've had sex before and I can't, it is okay. He will forgive you and He will help you, but you have to develop that relationship with Him. And if you need someone to be accountable, you can find me on Facebook, send me a Facebook message. I will talk to you about it, and just I want to let everybody know that it's possible, that He can do it, and that it doesn't matter where you start from, or your background, or the things you've done, how many people you've been with, or the thoughts that you have or the habits you have. If you seek that relationship with Him, He can turn that around drastically to where it won't have a stronghold on you. So it's definitely something that sexual purity is achievable, but it is also something that you have to work at, and something that you have to want, and something that you have to nurture. And so when you start doing those things, it's not a trap for you so much anymore. You can live outside of the confines of sexual immorality.
Woman of God, this is really, really interesting. The world has to listen to you because you are speaking as a living witness. You have been transformed by the Most High God. You have experienced total transformation and liberation from struggle to purity. So your word of encouragement, your word of advice is you are a witness and you're a living testimony. So the world has to listen to us. I'm really, really having a wonderful time on this interview section with you, and I've been blessed, so blessed with your testimony, with your advice, with your detailed answers to our question. I know a lot of people will be blessed when they hear this interview. God bless you so much for the time and continue to give you grace in order to speak continually on sexual purity and your work on celebration. God bless you, Destiny.
Thank you so much for just taking the time to speak with me, and for connecting with me, and for sharing with me, because your testimony and your encouragement, it'll definitely be one that helps me to continue on whenever I feel that I might be weak. So thank you for connecting with me and sharing. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.